Let me tell you a bit about my guest. Dinesh D'Souza is the president of King's College in New York City. As a former policy analyst in the Reagan White House, Dinesh has enjoyed a distinguished 25-year career as a writer, scholar, and public intellectual. He has been called one of the top young public policymakers in the country by Investor's Business Daily, one of America's most influential conservative thinkers by the New York Times Magazine, and the World Affairs Council lists him as one of the nation's 500 leading authorities on international issues. Dinesh is the author of several New York Times bestsellers, including Illiberal Education, What's So Great About America, What's So Great About Christianity, and Life After Death, The Evidence. His articles have been published in major newspapers and magazines, including The Wall Street Journal and Forbes. His books, not to mention a razor-sharp wit and entertaining style, have allowed Dinesh to participate in highly publicized debates about Christianity with some of the most famous atheists and skeptics of our time. His latest release, God Forsaken, tackles the challenging question of why an omnipotent, benevolent God would permit so much suffering in the world. In his debates with leading atheists whom Dinesh considers friends and debate partners, he noticed that many of them aren't real unbelievers. It's not that they refuse to believe in God. Rather, they are angry and disappointed with God. Their main complaint is that God, who is supposed to be all-powerful and good, seems in reality to be uncaring and even malicious. They fault God for allowing so much evil and suffering in the world. Let me begin with this challenging question tonight. How would you answer the question, how can a good God allow so much suffering in this world? Give me a call live in the studio, 1-855-588-CALL or 2255. Go to our webpage, itsyourcall.tv. How can a good God allow so much pain and suffering?
It seems that the problem of evil is largely unique to Christianity. You don't find it in Islam. In fact, one of the great scholars of Islam, Saeed Hossein Nasser, in a recent book, says that Islam means submission. And he says that even the greatest scholars of Islam haven't really worried about why God permits suffering. They simply submit to God's kind of greater wisdom, and that's kind of the end of the subject. Now, I do know that in the Eastern religions, Buddhism, Hinduism, and so on, suffering is seen as almost an illusion. It's seen as not real in some way. It's a kind of veil of deception that we put over ourselves. And of course, in Hinduism, there's specifically the doctrine of reincarnation, that if you're suffering now, well, gee, you must have done something terrible in your previous life or one of your previous lives, and you're getting the just deserts of your own previous actions. So you might almost say that in Hinduism there is no unjust suffering. All suffering is seen as fully deserved. And so obviously there's no problem of suffering. Everybody's getting what they should get. Now, Judaism, interestingly, does wrestle with this problem. Of course, we have the book of Job, a classic discussion of suffering. But it's really in Christianity that suffering has seemed to have been the greatest problem. And Christian theologians, going back to Augustine and so on, have wrestled, Pascal, Leibniz, have all struggled with why a just and benevolent and omnipotent God would allow suffering. So it's a Christian problem to a large degree, and I believe there is in some ways a uniquely Christian answer.